Get into the right account, yeah. Yes.
Yours is live.
Fantastic. Cool. So now we should have a recording, and if anyone wants to join on YouTube, they can do that too. So thanks everyone for coming. Sorry I'm a little bit late here. It's been a busy morning. Here to kind of go over what do I usually put as the agenda items. So check out the current tasks, review any sort of like businessy needs that we should use to change focusing, general questions, and all that kind of stuff. So the only thing I have in progress right now is the pull request for multiple sensors per device, which is the air-centric one. I think I noticed Peter mentioned in the channel. I don't know, Joe, do you have any kind of context on, because Peter said, what was it? We have, oh, okay, he just says more pressing things to get done. I thought that someone mentioned something about like getting pressure from outside sources about air, but maybe not. Maybe I just misread it.
We are getting pressure, but just to have something happen, the biggest pressure on the air sensors is visualizations.
Cool.
We're starting to collect data, and we don't have any way to see it.
Cool. And I guess visualization component, I think, the pull request that's open right now is more around just getting the data into the API. I don't know if Nick had any plans on how to visualize it, and the other thing that comes to mind is like we have a ticket open to switch the current visualizer to be more based on kind of the drive file itself for radiation as well. I forget which ticket that was, but it's one of it's a 197 replace legacy API map visualization, because we do,
Oh, that's on the API when you're doing uploads. The visualization there is how is that a priority? It's working okay. I think we have a lot more pressing.
It's a little bit lower down the list. The reason I bring it up though is, is it worth trying to visualize air data using Google Maps, or would we rather try to visualize it directly with something similar to like what Nick was proposing?
From my point of view, as a data collector and a data user, and not a programmer, I don't care.
It wasn't really viable. I think they're still working out hardware stuff. Okay. Is that Nick mentioned? I don't know if you have the chat open there, Joe.
I can see, yeah, I think it's here plenty really okay. Yeah, I can see this chat on the other side. I don't know, one thing I mentioned to Peter last night, we have a couple extra sensors at the office, and I have some here at home that I'm wondering how to get them into the system. Not because I want to see the data, just because they're lying around putting out data and we aren't using it at all. And it's really simple data, temperature, barometric pressure, humidity, and it seems like we should be generic enough that stuff should happen without too much effort.
At the moment, for the point cast, we're sending temperature data already, but that directly goes in the API within the ID.
Well, fundamental things like that, they're not really critical like the radiation data is, but it's something that, I don't know, it's something I should be able to do in a couple of minutes, I would think. I've got a location, I've got a sensor, it's collecting data. There should be a way to associate it either with my point cast or with my radiation data somehow. But I don't know how to do that, or if we're even going to do that.
Yeah, I guess the thing that's coming to my mind is, does it make sense not to worry too much about ingestion into the master database, but rather focus on visualizing the raw data that's coming out of these devices as like a start? Like essentially, we have the drive files, or I guess they're not drives because it's not moving around, but whatever you want to call it. We have the logs.
Right.
We have the log files. It feels to me like it might make more sense to have someone. I'm not a great visualization person. I know Nick is the one who does the tile maps. I don't know what sort of resources we have around sort of visualizing this data. But if we have some data and we want to start visualizing it, it feels like the place to spend time is on direct visualization of the logs and getting some prototypes on that front, rather than pushing really hard on getting into the master tables.
That makes sense, because then you can write a filter or a scraper or something that drags data out of the database, based on whatever parameters.
Yeah.
and then feed it into the same thing as though it were a log file, because you could create a pseudo log that was extracted from the database.
And it might give us a sense for what we even want to like put into the database and surface from the database by
Right.
kind of playing around with it a little bit initially.
Yeah.
I could try a couple of things, but like I said, I'm not like, I'm more of like a DevOpsy reliability engineering sort of guy, not so much a
Right.
visualization guy.
Well, if
So I don't
somebody
know if
wants a
there's
really big challenge, I also have a wind sensor.
a wind sensor. Cool.
That's really tough to visualize.
Is it? Is it just because it's really
It's a
noisy?
classic problem.
Gotcha. So, so yeah, I don't know. Maybe what do we have? I think there was a ticket open around visualizing error data.
Yeah, there was. I remember too.
Okay, display error import after upload. We didn't have anything real specific to like the visualization. It just says display, like it's just like a show page, I think is what we were envisioning. We didn't have any clear idea. So maybe I'll add something more specific around visualization data.
Are there any log files with error data in the database yet, or anywhere besides?
So we have a couple of example files checked into the branch that the hackathon work happened on,
Yeah,
and you can import those. If you run that branch, you can import those into whatever local database you happen to be running that branch on. Like that part has worked. That's not pushed out to production, but I also think it feels like maybe a little early to try to push it out to the production database as well.
I think so too. I haven't seen any error data at all.
Yeah.
Other than looking at the screen. Other than looking at the screen of the air sensor when it was in my possession.
I can link to the branch, but ultimately it's it's all text basically that you can run. You can upload that import file, and then it'll get into that local database. But it's still just SQL rows you're looking at, right? So it's not the most exciting thing. So hold on a second, I'm reading next chat here. I don't know if that will work. Visualization will be primarily about showing the most recent sample from a number of sensors. Displaying it like a drive log doesn't work because the spatial position doesn't change. Yeah.
Right. It's all in one place.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the one we temporarily made for Will to show the data. So that's coming directly from the API.
Looking.
Oh, this is the one where we're just sending single measurements in?
This is test. So basically, any sensor you can put in. It's very easy to do.
Oh, I see. And this is the one that it's just a single methane ppm. Oh, and I see. And you put like just a one dot on a map that you get the most recent value. Yeah.
So there's nothing else. But very simple one. We can do, but not the proper way to do it.
Okay. How are we doing for log files from the air devices? Are we collecting those anywhere?
No, not yet.
Okay. Could we?
Here, and I think we should start to think about collecting them and putting them in.
Yeah.
But
could we like at least put them on like a Google Drive or something? We have that Google Drive folder, right?
Yeah, I can make them and put them on, so we can work.
Because that might be a good start, right? Like, let's just at least get the files in, and that way we can start playing around with them.
That reminds me of something related. Rob, did you get the data file from the Tomioka sensor?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
What's going on?
No, I have the whole file, and I didn't look at it yet. So
for Matt and Nick, the 3G card went offline in December for the Tomioka radiation sensor for the point cast, and so its data feed was cut off from the database. Peter and I visited it last week and changed the card, but then we also collected the file from the SD card. So essentially the data wasn't lost, it was just being locally cached. And how we're going to get that into the database to recover that months-long, 5-month-long, essentially communications outage is an interesting problem.
no, but it should be easy. I can take a log file and then import it as a big log file. That should work fine.
Does it come out as a log file, or I don't even know how these things write out local? Like, it's a point cast, right?
The format is slightly different from a bGeigie log. It has a different identifier on the first of string, but it is a text file. It's a or a CSV file. It's labeled .text instead of .log. But I don't think you can just put it in like as a drive because the API won't recognize the device identifier, will it?
I think we set for that.
We could probably come up with a way to make it.
Yeah, it could. I mean, it should be pretty easy, but I don't think we've actually done it before.
I put a link to a Google Drive folder in here called Safecast Air Logs. If anyone has any like preliminary logs, I would say let's start getting those in there. That'll make things clear as far as what the current state of things are. The log file that you got from that PointCast device.
Yes.
Why don't we? It's just like one file, right? Like it's not like the communications problem has been resolved.
One of the difficulties is the log file extends from the time I started the sensor till the time we pulled the SD card out. And the communications outage lasted from December to about the same time. So part of it is the bulk of the file, the first half of it at least, is data that's already in the database. So I don't know how the deduplication ingestion routines will handle that, or if we should just trim the file manually. Something.
I will do it manually. I will see what last data what's in there, and then take the data out and put it in.
Rob, do you have the log or no?
Yeah, I have.
Okay. I opened up a ticket. I'll assign it to you, and you can even just. I think if you zip it, you can actually just attach it straight to the ticket. So that way at least we have it. Or if you have it, it's probably not that big a deal. But if you want someone else's help on it, maybe throw the log file itself up there, so that way, if I need to look at the format on something, I can, or anyone else who decides to help out. I'm pretty sure GitHub will let you drag a zip file into a comment. So, but that doesn't sound too bad. I think we can work with that. At least we're not talking schema changes or anything. It's just a matter of trying to figure out what's already in the database and what's not. And the deduplication should help us out there, because it is, it's basically value, lat long, time.
Rob, do you know how big the file is? It's once every 5 minutes for about 5 months. Is that bigger than a typical drive file?
Yeah, I think so. Much bigger.
But probably not too big. Do you know how big the file is if you have it there?
12 megabytes, I think.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's much bigger. The typical file is 100K for long drives.
Yeah. But 12 megabytes isn't too bad. We might have to do some processing on our laptops before we try to just shove it up to the API. Because the API probably would not be happy sending it a 12 megabyte.
I mean, if we probably want to look at the dates and like trim it to about the at least a short time before the communications log failed.
Nick mentioned he has a JavaScript app that'll do some conversion to submit it as single measurements. Where is that? Can you throw a link to it on the issue that I posted, perhaps?
Yeah. No, I will try it locally and see if that works.
Cool. Yeah, run it against your local DP first.
Yeah, and see if that works or it should be fine.
Cool. Sounds good. To Nick's point around the air log, I'm just taking some notes here, and I feel like the idea of getting back to the air logs, the idea of visualizing the log files directly probably still makes some sense, but it sounds, to Nick's point, we're going to want more than just one log file from one device. We're probably going to want like a bunch, so shove as many as you can into that folder.
Okay.
Rob, you still have an air sensor?
Yeah, I have this here.
Okay, so you can generate log files.
I can generate them. It's it's one of the first ones, and it's not calibrated and other things, but I can make.
Well, I don't expect to be able to put data into the live data yet, but we need to start somewhere.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, we probably want to change the log file format, maybe, but we don't know until we start trying.
Yep.
Okay.
Cool. Let's go to that drive folder. Open a ticket for this thing.
So does the group chat wind up connected to the YouTube stream at all?
That's a good question. I have no idea.
If not, then somebody should read Nick's text so that it winds up at the
Good point. It probably doesn't come up into it. I think it's actually just the visual window. Didn't even think about that. I'll load up the feed quickly and see.
Oh, my mistake.
Are we drinking now?
Yeah.
We can check that. Yeah, the chat does not end up in the feed from the looks of things.
Rob just inadvertently invented a new program called Pintcast, which is what we do after hours.
That, that's great. Yeah, I wish there was like a.
Keeping track of all the beers that the people drink, and we'll put a log file and we'll have Pintcast.
Good typos, no? Bit fast.
I like it. Have a new BGIG edition that keeps track of your blood alcohol level.
That's right.
Put a little tube on it.
Yes, the Safecast breathalyzer.
Like it. Cool. I took note of that. I'll try to make sure to repeat what Nick says going forward.
Okay.
So far, just for the sake of the recording, he says he has a JavaScript app that converts the non-BGIG logs, like what we would get from the Pointcast, and submits them to the API as single measurements, but it will require some rewrite for the log file format.
Yeah, I'm not sure. What's the advantage of having them submitted as individual measurements?
If we submit them as individual measurements, we don't have to worry about the association with device ID, as Nick put, and then also we can do any formatting before we actually try to post the measurements. So we don't have to necessarily have the API be aware of the format necessary to adjust these things. So that's an advantage from my perspective as well.
Mm-hmm.
Nick also mentioned association with the device ID. So.
Okay.
So that
means that stuff that comes in from a regular log file is not associated with a device ID?
The stuff in the log file is, yeah. But I think this stuff sounds like it probably won't be. I don't know for sure. Nick, if you want to clarify. But yeah, if we post as a measurement, we don't necessarily have to.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true, though.
I
remember looking at that last meeting.
Can't we run a process to extract a device ID from the log file?
They should be able to do it. That should be very simple to do, no?
I guess I don't know. I must admit that every time I've tried to talk to people about how Postgres and the database works, that I always throw up my hands. I decide, okay, I'll concentrate on other things and let the people who know what they're doing to work on that. I don't understand how it works.
Yeah.
I mean, I stopped programming when BASIC was the most popular language, so I'll just give up.
Because I mean, we do have there are ID fields on the measurements table that go back, and I remember the last time we talked about this, I looked.
But they're not putting. I don't know why.
I thought some of them, or maybe they were, and they weren't at some point. But I thought for sure there was an association back to the import. Maybe that doesn't go. It's possible that doesn't go all the way to a device ID.
Not the device ID.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just loading up the database here. Measurements, right? So measurements have a device ID. Measurements.
Okay, so if you've got another column in the database that is not being populated by the log file, and it's not coming from the serial number of the BGIG. Okay. Who knows why it was designed that way? I mean, somebody knows why, but I don't.
Okay, it doesn't go back to the serial number of the BGIG, is that what we're saying?
Well, there have been a lot of discussions about what is device ID. You know, like when we, especially with the point casts, when we change a circuit board or change the sensor, should we start a new number? And we have been doing that, and that's been in some ways problematic because then you don't have continuity of graphs. On the other hand, it's more scientifically rigorous, I guess, because something is changed in it, and you don't want, you know, if the sensor is different, it might not have the same calibration factor or something. It's an ongoing debate.
Colin wants to join the Hangout. You just need the link. That's all. Right.
Yeah, the link from inside in the Slack. I can try and talk in a really deep voice, and I can pretend I'm calling.
You need a mind change too.
No. A little less hair.
Let's say, you're getting close.
Oh,
Right, so it belongs to a device. Oh, I see. But the device ID is not the individual BGAGI in question. It's more about like the manufacturer and the model number.
Oh, I see now. Yeah, we had that. It's not the device ID means like whether it's a BGIG Nano or a BGIG or a Gamma Scout or anything like that. Right, right.
Yeah, that's the place it's tied back.
Right.
Yeah, it does belong to its own measurement import, which might give us more info. Like it should at least be able to get us back to the log file, which would have the serial number in there.
Right. Right. Device ID is not device serial.
No.
Yeah, it's more like the.
We also have something called device type 2, also, which is not the model number or the, you know, it has to do with whether it's like a radiation device or what kind of tube it has, or I forget. There's all those different ways to slice and dice the parameters.
Okay. Yeah, because we do have. Yeah, it is mapped back to a measurement. I guess in that sense it is still associated, but yeah, it doesn't look like we take the BGIG serial number, for example, and store that with the measurement directly.
Would it be good to do?
Hard to say. But there is that question, to Joe's point, and I think part of what we were planning on doing with the open pull request for multiple sensors per device is actually not to worry as much about the serial number for like a given kit, but rather actually give, for AIR anyway, and then maybe eventually for BGIG, give the config file a unique identifier for each measurement channel.
Right.
So that way we know that like sensor, I think we're calling it sensor ID or something like that. I forget. I know the name nomenclature didn't work out as intuitive as I wished it would have.
Right.
But we should have some sort of ID that says, okay, we know that this measurement came from the, you know, the fifth bucket of the PM 2.5 sensor on this particular kit because the kit has that config file on it. And so assuming people aren't kind of trying to spoof the config files, which I think we can, you know, not a lot of gain there for people trying to impersonate other people's IDs. You know, so long as we can trust the config files that are on the devices, that should tie us back.
Well, there is some concern about the device IDs because there have been a couple of devices that use the same serial numbers inadvertently or because people wanted their big ID number to be, I don't know, 1337.
Of course.
Who wouldn't, right?
Yeah, of course. But on the plus side, I think once we have that kind of thing rolled out and we can generate config files for given devices, one of the things we could do is if we suspected like device ID collision, we could basically just ask those people to put a new config file on the device and give them a new ID.
The difficulty is in detection.
Yeah.
Because,
for sure.
for instance, if there's two nanos out there in the world, and one of them's in Europe and one of them's in California, and they're both using the same number, how would we even know that it's two different devices or somebody who's traveling?
Yeah, we'd have to do the calculation, right? You could try to come up with a heuristic, like for example, having measurements very close together temporally but not spatially.
Right. Or vice versa, and it's. As these, being an open source project or an open hardware project, there's always the possibility that somebody's going to try and build one of these things without any contact with us whatsoever, and just
start sending us stuff.
And the most common number collision is on 0.
Yeah,
okay, when the config file is missing or something, and it just comes in as device 000.
Yep.
But those are almost always test files.
Yeah.
So far, everybody has either contacted eventually and say, hey, what number should I use? And I'm not sure where the numbers come from. I think Peter or Sean then just picks a number out of the air and gives them one.
Probably.
For the early minis, I set the numbers, but for the nanos, I'm not sure where that's going.
Someone's probably got a spreadsheet somewhere.
The document file they have.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, we did talk about a pattern. We had all of the first nanos were assigned in the 1,000 and 2,000 range, were the ones that Dan shipped out from Medcom, were in thousands, and ours were in the 2,000s. But that's all gone to crazy since then. And I only know of one instance where somebody wound up sharing an SD card or moving it at one of the workshops, and they got in the wrong system, and so somebody was submitting data for a couple of weeks with a number that wasn't the one that was printed on their BGIG. And actually, I know of several cases of things like that where I'm looking at a data file and no, it didn't come from this BGIG. Look, the acrylic is labeled 2025, and the data
that's not what's on the card.
On the SD card says some other number. So
yeah, I don't think there's much getting around that unless we went as far as to burn numbers into bits of hardware. But
I'm not sure how much it really matters especially if it's a nano and it's got the pancake tube. There are far bigger problems is whether or not they've got it in the case or whether they're putting it next to the ground. It's going to be more likely to clear up the data than the fact that it's got the wrong number on the serial number of the device.
Agreed. Cool. So to that end, I think we can tie things back, but also we can publish measurements directly, and then we don't have to worry about device ID. So,
right. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and the device ID that's null is not the BGIG serial. It's the thing that like identifies it as a BGIG nano class. Sensor,
right.
Which comes in at null most of the time, it looks like, and I don't know. I guess that's kind of okay. That's another thing. I think by and large, a lot of our data is probably going to be nanos or point casts, and we could work it out if we needed to. Cool.
Right. There are some measurements that were put in by hand early on that that aren't from BGIGs, but
yeah. Cool. So I put that in progress for you, Rob. Since it sounds like you have that log file, let me know.
You can do that. That's fine.
Yeah, be good to get that in. I did a little bit of ticket filtering a couple of weeks ago, and there was one thing that said like critical drive not processed, so I kind of bumped that to the top of the ready stack. I might pick that up, or someone else might pick that up. The other thing, I don't explicitly have a ticket open. Oh, we have a new pull request. Fun. I don't specifically have a ticket open for it, but I have a couple of tickets around AWS since that got approved and I got access to the account.
Yeah, if you can start testing, that would be great.
Yeah. I want to make sure I don't fault some of the air efforts, but it sounds like if if someone else can work on visualization, and Rob, you've got the point cast thing, then maybe I should work on the AWS thing. What I'm especially excited about with this, and what I think will be the big win, is getting the database onto RDS makes it very easy to attach things like read slaves. And so my suspicion, I don't know for sure, but after we swapped one of those app hosts, and I noticed that like there's basically these big jobs that just run direct against the main database that everything else runs against. I get the impression that actually some of our downtime could be related to that, right? That like essentially, if we have a script that's loading things out of the database for like a half hour, any requests that come in during that half hour are probably going to be impacted, and how much will vary depending on what the request was for. Obviously, the measurements index page is like one of the heavier things. Most of the time it runs fine, but I wouldn't be surprised if you tried to hit the measurements index page in the middle of one of these bulk operations. It would be really slow. So what I'd like to do is, once we get on AWS, kind of like my first order of business is going to be to attach a read slave to our database, and then move all of the measurement exports and stuff like that to...
Sorry, what's the read slave?
The read slave. So it basically, it's a replica. It's like a live replica of the main database that is read only. But the nice part is you can hammer that till the cows come home, and the master won't be impacted. The only thing that might happen is if you really pound the crap out of the read slave, it might fall behind the master a little bit while you're pounding on it. But then eventually, once it lets up, it can catch back up.
Right.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Way to test it out.
Yeah, and RDS makes that really, really easy to set those up. So,
do you have any sense of the ratio of reads to writes? We should be hugely on reads compared to data updates.
Yeah, I couldn't say offhand. I think I might be able to pull that out of Datadog, but I think you're right that we're pretty read heavy, and that would be another thing that could be a possibility, right? Is I was imagining first off just a read slave to handle these batch jobs, but what we could even investigate is having most of the browsing around the site and all that kind of stuff happen on its own read slave as well, and then when you upload a log, that goes to the master database to handle the writes. Obviously there's like, you have to be a little bit concerned about replication lag if you do that, because you might have cases where someone uploads a file but then isn't able to see it because it writes to the master, and the master may.
Yeah, but we have always told people at the workshops and stuff that the time between you submit a log and the time that says it's live and the time it winds up, say, on the visualization can be hours. In the case of the iOS app, the essentially Nix app, it's until you manually update the database. So that's not a problem. I mean, multiple hours, even 24 hours, I think is not a problem.
Yeah, and so that's another thing that, and hopefully it wouldn't be that long. I mean, we're talking more, in the order of seconds to minutes usually is the lag on these things. So, so that'll be another thing. I at least want to get those batch jobs off. The other thing that comes to mind is maybe getting the admin page off, because or maybe stripping down the admin page, because that's the other thing I noticed is that just loading, like clicking that admin link is really heavy as well, because what it tries to do is go out and like count every single table, when like the default homepage for that admin thing is to give you counts for every type of record we have in the database, which is a really heavy operation. So anytime anyone decides to click admin, like on the UI, the service just gets pounded.
Or easier to just go to Big IG imports. Admin imports, then
if you go straight to the imports page, that's better. But yeah, if you click on admin, like staging won't even load, because the staging hardware is not good enough to service that request within 60 seconds. So so that'll be the thing that I'm especially interested in. I think that'll be the big win of getting to AWS, is basically being able to leverage RDS, because it makes things like setting up slave databases for batch operations a lot easier. It also makes backups and restore from backup a lot simpler too. You basically get backups for free, and at any point, if you want to read the data that's in a backup, what you can do is actually, instead of having to download the whole thing, you can just tell RDS to give you a new database server that reads that backup in. And then so you don't even have to worry about transferring the entire data set back out of the cloud. You can just start up a new small RDS instance, work directly with that, and then everything just stays up in AWS. You don't have to download all 32 gigabytes locally. So
that's pretty useful.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Looking forward to see that.
Yeah. So maybe I will focus on that so long as everyone's in pretty good shape as far as the point cast and error visualization is concerned. But that's like the next thing that's on my mind. Is I think that could be good. I think we might have to count on a little bit of downtime just to get the data moved over. So once I get the deployment sorted out, what I'll have to do is move the master database over. It's one of those things where like you could try to change the tires while the car is driving, but I think it's going to be a lot simpler just to plan on a couple of hours where we're offline, where we're copying the database up to AWS.
Was that deliberate?
Sorry?
Is that deliberate?
What, changing the... Which part? The tire metaphor?
We had a big anniversary drive last week, right?
Oh, did you? No, that was totally unintentional.
We left 4 or 5 hours late because I had to change the tires during the drive.
Oh, okay, yeah, exactly. So yeah, 4 or 5 hours. Hopefully about that same amount of time. We'll see. I don't know for sure how long it's going to take to copy. But,
the big tires.
On the right side, we have new tires on the car.
Yeah, there you go. But it's the same sort of deal where, like, yeah, there's tricks that we could try to do it with almost zero downtime, but I don't think it's worth it to spend that amount of engineering time. I think we'll plan on just once everything is pretty much ready to go and we know that the import process is going to work, what we'll do is just shut down the current api.safecast.org site so that people can't upload any new data.
Right.
Do a final snapshot, move that up to AWS, and then break things back online on AWS.
Yeah, but please let me know, because I get emails directly from the Pointcast timing out 50 minutes too late.
Yes.
It's going to be very busy.
To that end, do you know, does anyone know where the DNS record is managed for api.safecast.org?
It's done in a media temple.
Okay, Media Temple. Do you have access to that, Rob, or is that a Sean thing? Okay. And then do you know the Pointcast?
I didn't hear. Hold on.
Like, are they because eventually what I'm going to have to do is repoint that DNS record to the AWS resources.
Mm-hmm.
Do you happen to know? I mean, we can just let it shake out when it shakes out, but that might be something to just be aware of. Is like if those devices hang on to the IP address of the old DNS entry for a long time, then we might have some fallout there.
Yeah, that could be. So
Yeah. Something to watch out for.
But I can redirect them from the gateway if I want to. It's a simple script. I can redirect it directly to the new hardware if we have to temporarily, and then switch it back later when the DNS is resolved.
Yeah, I think that might be the thing, is we might have to go in and basically just kick all the gateways to make sure they get the new DNS entry. Because a lot of, like, I find I'm often surprised where, like, I think something is going to know to read the new IP, and it just doesn't. It just hangs on an old IP forever. So it was like StatsD or something. There was some service I was playing with recently where I was like, oh, I'm sure it'll work, and like, no, it resolves DNS once at startup and never again. So
okay, ready to move on?
yeah, I think we're good. So that's on the horizon. I'll probably spend some time on that.
I'm
Cosmic.
Cosmic is happening, so that's fine.
It's happening. Okay, what's the status? I haven't heard anything in a few days, in a few weeks.
We can just enter it, but it doesn't go in the measurement yet. That's it. So.
What do you mean we can enter it? I'm sorry, that didn't make sense.
Or we can assign it to a drive. It's a Cosmic data drive.
And then it'll stay out of the tiles, though, right?
Yeah, it's at the moment it stays out of the tile. And
okay.
Yeah. So it's a question of what do we do with it now that it's in the database, but at least it's there.
Okay, so so those files are going to fall out of the queue of unapproved drives, right?
Yeah.
Is someone going to take point on getting those appropriately labeled?
Peter and me will do that.
Okay, you and Peter. Cool.
Okay.
Yeah,
we got a request for airplane data again from a media person just this week. So we need to have a Cosmic map for an article that's coming up soon.
For a specific drive or for?
Not for a specific drive. I talked to Peter about it last night. Was related to a conference that was up in Fukushima this last weekend, and somebody was asking about the radiation in airplanes. They want to have a good visualization, and Peter was like, "Well, we have something with that coming soon." So being able to have a way to show our airplane data, the Cosmic data, is becoming relevant.
Okay. Good. Sorry, I have to go.
Okay.
All right.
Coming up on 10:48. Okay, 10 more minutes.
No, I have to run out. So that's
Go
it.
for it.
Okay.
Talk to you soon, Rob.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay, and so Nick says they just need to get flagged as cosmic data mostly. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And Rob said he and Peter are going to take point on making sure that they do get flagged and
Well,
approved appropriately.
there's some other nuances around it because let's say I have a drive file that I collected. I started out in the middle of California. I drive to Los Angeles. I get on an airplane, and the entire file and contains both data. So the ground data is regular ground data, but then in the same drive, I have airplane data. So we need to manually probably go in there and separate those and say, okay, up to this point in the time, it's regular
Yeah, you might have to isolate those as two drives.
It's air data. It's cosmic data. So.
Yeah. And then Nick has a point here to keep in mind. BGeiG's CPM to millisieverts per hour has nothing to do with actual dose rate for cosmic radiation. So
Yes, I know.
yeah.
But all I really want to know is kind of relative numbers. That in the visualization, we should have something about that. Where we don't display the cosmic maps with microsieverts per hour. They should be. I don't know. Maybe we should make up a new word. Because it's just using CPM has been a little bit confusing too, because it's CPM on 2-inch pancake is a bit of a mouthful. I don't know. Maybe it should be cosmic widgets or something else. But we just want to have a kind of a relative sense of what you're exposed to. And in fact, I've got a conversation starting about that with a technical person in Tokyo soon, because he's also saying that the change in the physics of the cesium in Fukushima also means that our sensitivity numbers may not be appropriate, and I'm not sure that we can really worry about things at that level. But yes, I mean, ideally, people would like to put a BGeiG in front of themselves, turn it on, and a little screen light up and says, "You're going to die of cancer in 6,621 hours."
Yeah.
But
that'd be great.
You move away now. But it's people are struggling to try and make relevance out of the actual measurements, and that's a bigger problem than just Safecast.
Yep.
But so yes, I do recognize that the exposure rates in airplanes, probably should not be directly compared to, say, dose rates on the ground in Fukushima, or for that matter in Rome, or of places where the background is thorium and uranium. But we do just get kind of a thumbnail's distance idea of rates.
Why don't I file a ticket? It actually could be a good one for some of the new people coming in to at least when we, because right now those measurements won't end up in the tiles anyway, so the way that you would look at them is probably like on the show page for the drive. But maybe if nothing else, we should put like a little red banner at the top that if it's labeled as cosmic says, understand that our calibrations for, yada 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 are not intended for flight, so take any measurements on here accordingly.
Maybe.
I don't know how you want to word that, but
those kind of caveats, because where does it end?
Yeah.
You wind up with things covered with fine print, and it's
that's true,
you can't expect everything to be entire education in radiological protection to be on a placard stuck to the side of a BGeiG.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then let's punt on that for now, and at least for now, I don't have the IDs handy. I could probably dig one up, but we do have some of these cosmic drives that are getting labeled appropriately. If we want to share them with people, we can send them.
Are we labeling drives cosmic, or are we labeling data points?
The drive is labeled cosmic, yeah, and then it's associated back, like because the measurement knows which import it came from. You mark the import as cosmic, and then I'm pretty sure anyway.
Why didn't we put a cosmic flag in the database so that each data point could be cosmic and not everything in a whole drive? Because, like I say, sometimes I have drives that are 50% cosmic and 50% car.
You broke up a little bit there. Sorry. Yeah, so it's on the measurement import itself, which is representative of the log file. And then when we query the measurements, we query them back through the log file. I think the reason for not putting on every single measurement was a space consideration, but that's sort of a
1 bit per measurement.
It's not 1 bit though. It's
no?
Yeah. I mean, it's at least an enum. I don't know how big that is, but originally it was a string. Maybe as an enum it would be feasible to put it on the measurements table. I don't know. This is kind of like a Evadne or Nick question maybe. I don't know. I don't have a good visceral sense for how
Okay.
Columns relate to like on disk size in Postgres, but we have a lot of measurements, right? So even even like 8 bytes per measurement would be multiplied by 40 million. So that's something to consider. So I think the idea was, since we can put this on the measurement imports and link it in without, and the measurement imports is a much smaller table.
Can we have one column that's added that's somehow sliced bitwise that has all these kinds of things, about it, whether it's
I think that's
we have lots of little things we want to distinguish on a measurement, whether it's test data or whether it's valid data or whether it has a reputation score above a certain amount or whether it should be. All of these things could be combined if it's really a space constraint. But again, I'm getting into areas where I have little expertise. So
yeah, and I only have a little bit more than you anyway, so it's not. It's definitely more of a Evadne definitely knows her stuff when it comes to these. Okay, yeah, 42 bytes per row, and so it's 40 bytes times 40 million. So, and then the downside of that too is that a lot of that, like, I guess it would probably have to be indexed in order to do the query that we're looking for. So,
but there are ways to flag specific rows in the log, and that is manually. That's one way. It may not be efficient, but it does happen.
Like all the measurements that are not cosmic, then those 40 bytes times 40 million rows are going to have to go in the index as well. And the index is the thing that really hurts us because it needs to stay as much in RAM as possible.
Okay.
So I do know that part. Essentially what it comes down to is we want to be very judicious about things that we add to the measurements table because it's the 40 million row table.
Right. Okay.
And so any column that gets added 40 million times essentially to potentially both the disk and the in-memory index. So anything we can do to keep that down.
Rows that are already there that have a spare bit we could use?
Well, I think one thing that we probably should be looking into sooner rather than later, especially now that we're on SQL-based schema, not the Ruby schema,
Right.
It opens us up to the possibility of actually trying to shrink that table a little bit because we have places where we're using. I think we have places in that schema anyway where we're using strings that could be enums, which should be able to save us some space there. Anything we can do to kind of get the overall index, especially the index size, but also the on-disk size of that table down is going to benefit performance and then also cost because the bigger the index is, the more RAM we need and the more expensive the database gets. So
I think I'll stick to just saying, this is how I want it to work. Tell me what's possible.
Yeah, but we have, I'm trying to see what other varchars we have in here. Surface, radiation, we have a couple of varchars in here. I don't know for sure. Timestamps, all that kind of stuff. I haven't dug into it too much, but it'll be something it's certainly something we want to always keep an eye on because it is the big table.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the one where most of our database cost comes from is that measurements table. So anything we can avoid adding there, I think, is good.
Well, in that case, we definitely should have a look at reducing it because I'm sure there's data in there that's not that we thought we might need years ago and still and aren't using.
Yeah, I'm noticing there's there's like a surface, radiation, and device type ID that are varchars that it sure doesn't seem like they need to be. That would probably save us a bit of space.
Right.
I don't know for sure. Location name, I don't know if we can really avoid that, or maybe we don't care. I mean, we have the lat long. Maybe we don't really care about a location name. That's another varchar that's in there, and I believe the varchars are the ones that are heavy.
Well, yeah, there's all those things that are in the metadata too that might wind up in there that have turned out to be not real reliable in terms of what the users are putting in. So since if it exists on less than 10% of the log files or the uploads,
yeah, let's kick it out.
Yeah, maybe we just kick it out somewhere else.
Yeah, the log files, I don't think we have anywhere near as many of those, so I'm not as worried. But with 40 million rows in the measurements table, yeah, that's a place where it's good to be careful. It's a lot of cost. So.
Well,
Cool.
somebody should probably look at it who also, and then sit with somebody like me or Peter who knows how we want it to appear as in the final product and figure out what we can do without.
Yeah. And if we can get Evadne's time, she's certainly the most well versed in this stuff from what I've seen. Cool. Nick is also mentioning here, I think it's probably a similar sort of thing. It's like 40 bytes per row. Okay, that's what I just mentioned on the enum. 40 bytes per row doesn't matter much because there's no way to flag specific rows in the log as one thing or the other, which gets back to...
There are ways. I can think of a couple different ways that we could automate that difference, but that's a different discussion.
Itself doesn't have any sort of... The individual rows in the log aren't going to have anything on there. Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's not supported now, but that doesn't that we don't support it and that we haven't done anything doesn't mean it's not possible.
Yes. So for now it's there. We can basically join to get that data. Like we can query the measurements, joining it against the measurement imports table in order to get a per measurement idea. But it is, it keys off of the drive itself, which is where the field is right now.
Okay.
So if you wanted to separate it out, you would separate it out in drives, kind of like you talked about, right? So if you have a section that's on the ground and a section that's in the air, slice those up into two separate files.
What I usually do on those is I just manually text it as a file and split it into two files and upload them separately.
I think for now that's going to be the thing to do.
Yep.
So, but in the meantime, we can at least get these logs up there. And
yep.
Let me know if you think we should change. I can dig up a page for you, and if you think we should add or remove any sort of text, I can get a ticket open. And like I said, if it's a matter of just like, for example, hiding millisieverts per hour, that could be a really nice little ticket for someone who's new to the stack to pick up.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay, I think I'm done.
Cool. Nick, anything else before we close out? Nope. Good. All right. Right on time.
Right on an hour. Wow, look at that. 10:59.
Cool. I'll schedule a new one as usual sometime around the first Wednesday of the month, barring holidays and things like that.
Yeah, and then the notices you put in Slack a day before and an hour before, those are really useful for me because I always.
Cool. Actually, I wonder, now that you mention that, I think Slack has some sort of like a remind feature. Let me see if I can put in a reminder now that might be automatic. Because sometimes I forget. I'm only human, but maybe Slack can remember for me.
No, I was sitting. I opened up my my iPad. I'm gonna do my mail and open Slack. Oh, the thing's in an hour. Perfect. Yeah. Good thing I noticed.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, let me see. Maybe I can even have Slack's reminder.
Because there was a fair chance that I could have seen it and go, oh, it was an hour ago.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. All right, let's close it down, and we'll see you again this time next month.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.